CQ POTA, CQ Parks on the air. Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.
Hi, my name is K.Thomas. My call sign is W1DED. I've been reaching out to ham radio operators nationally and internationally. Today I have with me Eric Olson, KD9TEZ. Thanks for joining me, Eric.
Thanks for having me on.
So Eric and I first met, as I said earlier, all these people I've met on the air. We met during the main QSO party. And I put a pretty significant effort into that contest. I ran all 24 hours, and I had just moved to 15 meters and was just starting a run, a pretty successful run. And there was a very faint signal coming back to me. It was a KD9. I did pick that up. And I thought that the operator said, give me a minute, let me turn my antenna, which didn't seem unusual at all. Like if he was in the middle of the country, turning the beam toward Maine and New England sort of made sense. His signal got a lot better. We made the QSO, and I think I ended the conversation with the QSO with, thank you for turning your antenna. I soon got an email from Eric saying, I wasn't turning my antenna, I was tuning my antenna. And along with his comment, he sent a photo of a beach in Hawaii with, I think, a chameleon vertical setup. And apparently he had left the radio, moved over to the antenna, and tuned it. Am I getting that story right, Eric?
Yes. Yep. I had it set for 18 meters, and I wasn't getting a lot of contact. So I was like, let me check out 15 meters. And then as soon as I went over there, it landed right on your signal. So I just grabbed the mic and I tried to reach you without even realizing I didn't adjust the antenna yet. And so my SWR was off the chart. But after I tuned it, there you were.
Well, it was a great QSO for me. Just like many other ham radio operators, I would look at the worked all states on the POTA page every day, filled with green, except for that one white square for Hawaii. So knowing that I'd put Hawaii on the log was a great moment for me. So thank you for that.
No problem. We actually, you got me in the log twice that day even.
That's right. I think the first was 15, of course, and then I think I got you on 20 afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. And it ended up being a good contest effort for me, so your two certainly contributed. After that QSO, I started to pay attention to KD9TEZ, Eric's call sign, on social media, and your name was coming up a lot. And I wasn't clearly the only person that was very appreciative of the effort you were making to activate Hawaii parks. And in fact, I saw a certificate recently signed by Jason Johnson, the founder of Parks on the Air, naming you outstanding operator for the work that you're doing over there.
Yeah, it was very kind of them for someone to nominate me for that award, and then for Jason to approve it. It's an honor.
I'd like to read what Matt Pecora, K2MJP, said about you. With Hawaii being such a hard-to-reach state for most people in the continental U.S., Eric Olson, KD9TEZ, has made this daunting feat possible for many operators. In my opinion, Eric doesn't just seek to make a simple activation and leave. He takes the time to make hundreds of contacts during an activation, using many different modes and bands to help as many people contact him as possible. I've read countless comments by other operators not only thanking him for helping them reach their Worked All State award, but also sharing their stories of how he took the time to make sure it was a successful QSO, even in poor conditions. I believe that Eric is a prime example of what the POTA program is about and shows what it takes to be an outstanding operator by not only displaying patience, respect, and perseverance, but also using his unique location to help others. That's quite a citation.
It's very kind of him to write that.
Well deserved. So tell me about your participation in Parks on the Air. When did that begin and why?
It actually began just a couple of months ago in August of this year. I was looking for something, a fun activity to do to get on the air. And I was looking at summits on the air because I like going out doing adventures, hiking, photography, like beautiful vista photography. But the summits here in Hawaii they're a little intense for me right now. And while I was going through and looking at different programs, I found Parks on the Air. And I started to look into it. The website was great. There was a big community, so I was like, hey, I'll give this a try. I did a little hunting, and then I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna see if I can activate a park, and it's been an absolute blast since then.
So what are the parks that you normally go to, or are there usual parks?
There's a couple of parks that I keep going to. One is you're gonna have to forgive me in their pronunciation. It's Pu'u'ulaka'a. It's up on the mountainside right above Honolulu. It's an absolute gorgeous view, and the signals there's something magic about that location. The signals just reach the U.S. so well. Along with that, another one that I go to is the place where we had our QSO, which is Apuahana o Kahana. And that's a state park right on the beach on the windward side, so that's facing the U.S. So I can put my antenna right on the beach, and I get that saltwater amplifier, and I usually get really good signal reports, and I can hear people really well at that location.
And what time of day can people typically find you?
I typically try to go out between noon and 2 p.m. Hawaii time. So that's around 2200 to the 000 UTC rollover. I'm not a morning person, so I'm not. I don't get up and get to the park too early. But right around then is a good time. About right as the old late shift would start. That's usually when I try to get on the air.
And I suspect it never takes very long before a pile-up begins.
Usually within the first couple of minutes, I'll get a couple of calls. But the band conditions here are challenging. So an hour, maybe 2 hours in is when it really starts to get heavy.
And are you making, obviously you're making a lot of United States calls and probably Canada. Are you getting other parks around the world?
I get some in Japan, but not a lot. I try to focus on doing a lot of voice contacts. And that's typically U.S. mainland is where I get most of the contacts. If I go on to FT8, I'll get all kinds of DX stations. A lot in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia. The last camping trip that I was on, I was actually able to reach stations in Europe and got a good number of FT8 stations over in Europe.
So talk to me about your gear. What do you take with you on these little POTA activation trips?
So if I'm just going out for a couple hours, I'll usually take my ICOM 7300, a 23 or 23 amp hour battery, and then a chameleon vertical antenna. For the longer activations, if I can get out early in the morning and I know I'm going to be there all day, or if I'm going on a camping trip, I recently picked up a DX Commander Expedition, and that has just been working phenomenal for it.
That's good to hear. I don't know if you heard my conversation recently with John Gendron, NJ4Z, but he sold me on the DX Commander Expedition. I've got one on its way. They just put it on a DHL truck today. So I hope to have that in a few days, and I'm looking forward to trying it out locally and then taking it on a trip down the Caribbean in early January.
Yeah, it's absolutely a fantastic antenna. If you put down a bunch of radials, it's so amazing to have a resonant antenna that you don't need a tuner, and you just switch over the bands and you don't have to do anything. It just works.
So tell me about your radials. How many are you using and how long?
So I have the ICOM 705 is what I started with, but doing QRP in Hawaii it's a little more difficult. I still make contacts while doing it, just not as many. So after a while, I upgraded to the ICOM 7300, so I can do full 100 watts, and that's been working fantastic.
Any new equipment in sight in the future?
I do have a Zygu G90 that's stateside right now at some family members. So when I go home to visit them over the Christmas break, I'm going to try activating some parks with that radio.
And will that be your SOTA gear also?
No, I'll probably stick with the 705.
So you've got a military. You're in the military, I should say, and you have a communications background within the military. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I joined the Navy after college. I went to school for computer science and math. I initially wanted to be a pilot. I have a fascination with aviation, and it was absolutely just looking at military jets. Like as a kid, it was awesome. But sadly, my eyesight's not good enough, and couldn't pass the any of the exams for that for vision. So I was like, all right, I'll do IT work. So I joined the Navy in 2009, and then found out that the Navy treats IT work and communications. It's the same job, or the same job category. So I ended up doing a lot of long haul communications, HF, UHF, SHF, and EHF satellite communications. So I've just been doing a lot of communications in very tough environments for, at this point now, 13 years.
So first of all, thank you for your service. Much appreciated.
Thank you for the support.
Did the military comm experience come before or after ham radio?
A little bit of both. When I grew up, my dad was really big into ham radios. He was into Aries, racies, and storm spotting. But back then, I kind of treated ham radio like it was a tool and not a hobby. So ham radio was something you used to do what you wanted to accomplish. But growing up, I kind of figured out you could do more stuff with it. And in 2021, I went to DEF CON, and the ham radio village there had an awesome display showing you can work on satellites, you can do SSTV, and SSTV was awesome. That kind of made me start looking into what I can do with ham radio. So I took the tech test there, and then upgraded to general here just a couple of months ago.
Fantastic. Any plans to keep going?
I'm studying for the extra exam, but that'll be something down the road. It's the technician and the general class were pretty straightforward. Because of my previous background, it was just studying up on a couple of the FCC rules and requirements. But the extra is a whole different ball game with a lot more of the communications, like fundamentals of, down to the circuit level, and that's not something I've really ever done.
I've got to say that it really encourages me to see young people like yourself get involved with the hobby. Unfortunately, sometimes we have the improper brand of being an old person's hobby. I've obviously been around it for a while, took a 4-decade break, but if you just do the math, going back 4 decades, that puts me up there. Do you find a lot of younger hams in Hawaii, or have you intersected with many other hams in Hawaii?
I've met up with some of them. It's generally an older crowd, and they're a lot more focused on MCOM than that seems to be a main focus of a lot of people. So there's not a lot of POTA or SOTA activity out here, and that's kind of where I found my niche. That's where I have a lot of fun. So it's unfortunately I don't have too many people out here. There is another operator on Kauai, John WH6EY. But being on a different island, it makes it a little more difficult to meet up and activate together. I'm
sure. It's like being in a different country. Well, I can sort of relate to your experience because being here in Maine, there aren't a lot of full-time Mainers doing POTA activations. There's some, but I haven't been able to intersect with many. Frankly, most of the parks here in Maine get activated by people that are here on vacation. So they'll come up with their gear, they'll activate several parks and head back home again. And I really would like that opportunity to intersect with more people. I have had a couple of opportunities, but not as many as I would like. How long will you be in Hawaii for all of us that are looking to make more QSOs with you at parks?
I'll be here for a few more years. So right now I'm supposed to be here till July of 2025. In about a year or two from now, I'll find out what my future holds and where I'll be stationed next. But I'll be here for at least another 2.5 years.
I guess at this point, you're probably planning on staying in the military and retiring there.
Yes, I'm at just under 14 years now. So the plan is to do 20 years and then figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up after that.
I understand that one of the reasons you got into POTA was because of an HOA and some difficulty setting up an antenna in your home QTH.
Yes. So I live in a military community. So it's not really an HOA, but the rules are very strict. So they actually have an office right down the street from me. So as they come and go to work, they'll be able to see if I have antennas up. And I even had to request permission just to put a Starlink satellite dish inside of a fenced in area in my backyard. So it's extremely difficult to do HF at home. So basically, anytime I want to operate, I have to go to a park.
Do they provide any sort of military base station for ham radio operators?
Not really. They used to have Mars stations, but the Navy no longer does that. So we don't really have a place where we can go to operate.
There's a ham at Fort Drum in New York that I talk to consistently, and now I'm curious if he's operating on base or maybe off base, but I'll have to do some research and find that out. So what are the next things you want to get involved with ham radio?
For right now, I'm having a great time doing Parks on the Air. I don't really have any plans on changing that. There is some different modes and other things that I want to start incorporating just for fun. I really like SSTV. And I had one QSO on Hellschreiber, and that was super fun. So I want to start incorporating different modes, like at the end of an activation, just for fun.
Well, I'm sure that many of us will continue to look for you and watch you evolve within Parks on the Air. Any last remarks about Parks on the Air in general, where you'd like to see it go in the future?
Not too much in terms for the future. It's just, I think more public outreach just from other ham operators as they're going out, and be more visible. Some people talk about being stealth so they can be left alone and not be bothered. I'm never stealth. I'll set up my antenna on a park bench. People will come over, ask what I'm doing, and I say, hey, I'm playing with ham radio. I'm talking to people all around the world. And people are like, oh, that's super cool. Tell me about it. So I think just being out there and being visible and just interacting with other people. You don't have to be a PR expert to just tell people, hey, I'm just having fun talking to people around the world.
Yeah, I've gotten accustomed to putting my QSL cards out, which gives something for people to look at and to hold and actually carry away with them. And have had a number of conversations between the existing ham radio operators that combine know exactly what I'm doing to the people that are, what in the world are you doing? And then when you explain, some of them will still say, but why do you do it? Which is, becomes fun conversations and at times a little bit challenging. But the best are the kids that come by, the young kids that stop by and they're really intrigued by the exchange. I always have an external speaker, even though I use a headset, so they can hear the back and forth, and it's pretty rapid fire, so I think there's some excitement there. I haven't convinced anybody to get on the air yet, but I'm certainly game for it. I appreciate your approach. I think that's important. I wouldn't say that I operate in a stealth manner, but I certainly introduce myself to park rangers and have conversations with everybody who wants to have a dialogue. And I think it's important for the hobby. If we want to expand the hobby and grow it, then we need to get more people involved. And I think it remains somewhat of a mystery for most people. So kudos to you.
Yeah, and I've gotten some weird looks. I frequently get people coming up asking me if I'm listening to whales. So it's kind of interesting when you're operating at the beach. People have all kinds of questions.
Yeah, I suppose the beach would get that. The big one for me is I start to set up and people think I'm going to be operating a drone. I've literally got that about a dozen times, and I think they're just anticipating. They're usually park rangers anticipating. I need to tell him no. But by the time I explain it to them, they're all fine. Interesting thing also in Maine, a lot of the parks I go to, when I talk to a park ranger, they have seen a ham radio operator before. So even though a lot of parks haven't been activated a lot, at least they've had one or two experiences. So it's all normalized for them a bit. Well, Eric, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
So I've been talking to KD9TEZ Eric Olson, who is stationed in Hawaii and has been a very popular contact for many Parks on the Air hunters across the U.S. and Canada and the world. If you're needing Hawaii, please look for him. Apparently he's on every day, or most days. Is that correct, Eric?
Not so much anymore. I'm on most weekends. When I started out, I would usually try and hit up a park on the way home from work, but that park has gotten really noisy, and I can't do 20 meters at all there. So now I just try to focus on bigger, longer activations on a Saturday or Sunday. So I try to be out at the park for 4 to 8 hours. So it's about the same number of hours a week. It's just a lot bigger expeditions.
So I stand corrected. Look for Eric on Saturday and Sunday, long periods of time, and get Hawaii on the books. Thank you for joining me, Eric.
Thanks for having me on.
CQ POTA, CQ Parks on the air. Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.
Kilo Delta 4, Whiskey, Whiskey, India.
Kilo Delta 4, Whiskey, Whiskey, India 5x9 at Kilo 8291.
Roger, Roger. Got you 5757 Virginia. Victor Alpha this morning.
Thank you for 57 into Virginia 73. QRZ Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.